Hi, I'm Andy Franks. I am a tour manager and one of the co-founders of Music Support, which is a charity for addiction and mental health.
I'm Luke Edwards. I'm a lighting designer and production manager for artists such as Jesse J and Gary Newman. And yeah, I'm here today to talk about mental health. Why is mental health important to you?
Um, well, I suffered from drinking issues, which I think probably have mental health connotations as well, and I realised that there didn't seem to be anybody in the music business that was really sort of being able to speak on our level and people from inside the business. And I think that mental health is something that we should all be doing our due diligence to look at and ensure that people that we're working with have an opportunity to talk about it and find out more about it. And I think it's great to be able to talk about it to people. And I feel that maybe as somebody who's been in the music business for a long time, if I talk about it, it might, if it sort of spurs somebody else on to be able to talk about it, then I think that's a great thing.
I think for me as well, it's kind of like what we do is not necessarily the most stable in the world in terms of not having any rhythm, or when you have a normal job, you know what your patterns are going to be, and without our job is difficult enough as it is without having then any mental health issues come into that as well. So I think for me it's important that you can talk to people that can go understand the normal job part of it, and then the added benefit of if you're struggling with something to be able to help with that as well. I think
And I think also that because we work in a business of deadlines, I'm sure lots of other businesses do, but we know from our experience that those deadlines, when they have to be met, that mental health issues sometimes have to be pushed aside to be able to ensure that you can deliver what you're supposed to deliver. And purely being able to do that can bring out mental health issues as well. So
and the goalpost constantly moving, so you kind of feel like you're finally getting to a point where everything's cool and you're catching up with your own mental health stuff, and then all of a sudden, we've added another show, or we added another show.
Yeah, and for the reasons that our business is dictated by financial situation, mental health is not always thought about as the most important thing. It's maybe do extra gigs or do gigs that are unrealistic, or have work schedules or rehearsals or record records or anything like that in a way that it drives you to do things that in any other walk of life you'd say no. I need to. When people say, well, why don't you take a day off?
Yeah, it's just
not always very easy.
It's that cliche thing of the show must go on, and inevitably, no matter what everyone's going through, unfortunately, that show has to happen. Especially, if you've got 20,000 people that are paying for a ticket, those 20,000 people don't necessarily care that one member of the crew is having a bad day, right?
Or quite often the band don't care, or quite often the management certainly don't care that someone's having a bad day, and the people themselves don't care, or they think, well, I'm having a bad day, but what can I do about it? Because I've got to get and do the job. And people drive them because of the pressures of mental health. It can lead to all kinds of terrible outcomes. So, what does positive mental health mean to you?
I think for me it kind of means knowing that when you're not okay, it is okay to speak out about it. I think that and I think we have this, especially with social media now, we have this unrealistic view that everything is great all the time, and it's not. And I think especially among my peer group and colleagues, I see it more and more that people are actually now are starting to talk about, hey, I'm not feeling great, and in a way, it kind of like also links a bit back to like a bit of toxic masculinity in a male-dominated industry, where, you know, like, oh, I'm not going to tell someone that I'm not okay, and I think that is, positively, that is kind of changing, and I think, you know, with the music support and everything, it's kind of changed everyone's perception of it, and changed like no, we do a tough job, and, you know, we do go through some horrible things sometimes, and it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think certainly from my point of view, you know, I've been doing this for 40 years, you know, and certainly when we started, and even now, you know, people of my generation find it a lot harder to put their hands up, and, you know, being a man as well, you know, it's like you always think that you've got to sort stuff out, and, right, you know, you're the one in charge, and you can't show any sign of weakness, you know, which maybe that's what sort of mental health might.
But it's actually coming from a position of strength, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where, like, I think that perception is changing. Like, actually talking about
absolutely.
how you're feeling isn't weak. That's actually
well, that's the irony,
right?
Isn't it? That being able to discuss about it and to talk to people, whether you phone a helpline or whether you talk to your peers. I think that's, you know, in the older days, people used to sit around and talk amongst themselves and try and sort of sort out what the issues were. But as we all know, you know, we deal in a business where there are lots of great professionals who are brilliant at doing their jobs, you know, but when it comes to mental health, we try and sort it out ourselves.
Yeah.
Whereas the positive side is to phone up the helpline, to speak to professionals and try and get some professional help to try and find a way to sort things out, you know, and that's been a great sort of positive addition, and maybe through social media and the fact that people can now communicate with each other in a much easier way, that is just sort of helping drive the ability to get help and you know and move things forward.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed about me being quite vocal about the whole mental health thing, like it's incredible how all of a sudden then how many people do start talking to you when they, you know, when like once that barrier is all like, oh, so have you spoken to the chap? Oh, cool, so I can, you know what I mean? And it kind of, and that's actually been quite incredible to see, like, if you're, you know, if one person just being quite vocal and open about it, how that kind of has a chain reaction with.
Well, the stigma kind of goes away,
and I
doesn't
think,
it?
but for me, it's kind of like with, you know, with the trauma that I've dealt with, it almost like turns into a positive thing about seeing that you can help other people as well at the same time, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's an amazing thing to be able to talk about your experiences and to help other people, because again, it's, you know, when you're suffering some of these situations that happen, quite often you think you're the only one dealing with it, you know, even though you might be in a entourage of 100 people, you know, but you don't think that because everybody else seems okay, so they must be okay, you know. But once you start, I mean,
but they're all going through the same.
But they're all going through the same thing, yeah. So as soon as when you put your hand up and say, "Has anybody else?" It's sort of, you know, it's like, yeah, I'm getting that as well. It's great.
Yeah.
So let's do something about it. So.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the positive about coming out of it, is just accepting that it's normal to not be okay all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, and just because you see everyone being okay all the time on social media stuff, that's not the case, and it's unrealistic. And
don't be afraid to say that you've got a problem or that you're not, you know, because again, that's one of the things that I found, you know, when I was terrified of telling people that I was an alcoholic because I thought I'd be shunned, you know, and in fact the reverse was true, you know. I think a lot of people realised I was an alcoholic and didn't want to say anything about
before
it.
You did.
But also, you know, everybody was like, that's great that you're doing something about it, and people just want to be supportive, you know.
Like, obviously, like, you know, we've always talked about touring being a lot of pressure and everything else, but I mean, I definitely know there's positives about touring with the same people and with friends that have helped me with my mental health. I'm pretty sure it's the same for you.
Yeah, I think when you start to talk to people or you start getting help, that you can find other ways of dealing with your situation while you're on tour, or for people that, you know, once the genie's out of the bottle kind of thing, you can then start to work on the positive sides of it, you know, which is either going to meetings or I mean we even have meetings on tour now and stuff, and some of the safe tents that we run at the festivals, you know, that there are places for people to come during their working day when they need 5 minutes respite or just a little safe space to be able to go and not around all the mayhem and all the madness,
Yeah.
you know, that they can either just sit and chill out, or they can speak to other people there, or they can ask for help and advice. And I think that it's great knowing that, or certainly having the helpline as well, that you can get in touch with 24 hours a day. You can learn from speaking to therapists or getting help for your issues, you know, ways to deal with if maybe an attack comes on, or if something happens, how you can deal with that positively, and how you can look after yourself, and you know, through exercise, or just even going for a walk, or, you know, just doing something that's a little bit different. You know, I think it's great that that people now start to look at that as a way to. I mean, what have you found?
I think for me as well, it's like, because like definitely in my peer group, like everyone's being a lot more open about how they're feeling. So being with a group of people that you're on the road with for most part of the year, that you actually feel comfortable with discussing everything, has actually been a major positive, because everyone is going through the same thing. And it didn't take long to realise that as soon as everybody starts talking, everyone is going through pretty much the exact same thing. So keeping that behind closed doors is almost, you know, it was almost ridiculous in a way, because everyone is going through it, right? And I think the flip side in that is now is like we stay in touch with each other a lot more, like during the breaks, than we used to. Because normally, like we'd be on tour, the tour would end, and then yeah, cool, I'll see you in 3 weeks, and you wouldn't really talk anymore. Whereas, like for me, that was always really difficult, because you kind of felt like, you know, your routine gone, you've like fallen into a black social hole, because all of a sudden there's not 20, 30, 40, 100 people around anymore. So, you know, now that everyone's talking about it, it seems to be like everyone seems to be keeping contact more in between tours, which kind of it helps, because, you know, most friends, like as you can most probably say, is like you don't see each other for a year and a half, because if they're on another tour and you're on another tour, right? So just the fact of staying in contact, and I think that's the important part. And I think that's where, in the past, you know, the terrible things that have happened with people, it kind of leads up to that, because they feel alone when they've come home from the high of touring, right?
Or yeah, I think that maybe people even feel embarrassed, you know, that they don't want to burden their friends with their problems, because either they, you know, it's not something they want to hear about or whatever. But I think it's a great thing that you say that, you know, that people stay in touch with their with people from the road, and see how they're sort of doing, and check in with them, and also that people feel comfortable enough to phone up and say, you know, I'm not feeling great, or, you know, can we have a chat, or you want to have a meet up, or something.
But it is incredible though, because I had a friend call me the other day saying that he wasn't okay, and all he kept doing was apologising, right? And it's like, no matter how much you say, like, no, don't worry, you can call me, no matter, like, and there's that idea of like you telling someone you're not okay is that you're burdening someone.
Yeah.
Whereas why should that not be a normal part of social interaction? Like, you'd call your friends and tell you, hey, this really cool thing happened.
Yeah.
Why would you not call your friends and go, hey, this really bad thing happened, right?
Yeah, because people are ashamed. They think it's a negative rather than a positive.
Yeah.
You know, to phone up and say I'm not feeling great. You know, it's is.
Whereas that then probably pushes them further down the darker path, right? So,
yeah.
So obviously, knowing, you know, going through what you went through and knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to especially the younger people starting in this industry, and how to try and balance everything? And
Well, I would say that listen to people that are older, that have got experience, that have been through the kind of things that you're going through. it's it's great when you first get your first tour, or you get given it, you think, wow, I'm going to be doing this, or I'm going to work with this band, or maybe they might be a band you don't really care about, or they might be your heroes, and you think, wow, this is going to be incredible. But listen to the fact that people are telling you that there are pitfalls, and there are things that are, I think it's funny when you're young, because you never think you're going to get old. I mean, Pete Townsend, very happily, hope I die before I get old. Well, now he's old, and now he's got problems hearing. And if he'd have listened to himself, maybe he wouldn't be as deaf as he is, But of course, when you're young, you don't do that kind of stuff. You don't think, because it's not important. You think you're going to live forever.
You feel invincible, right?
Yeah, and why not? Because you're young and you've got the blood flowing through your veins. But I think it is really important to the fact that people are saying, and I think mental health now is something that is talked about. It's a prominent things in people's lives. It's not a taboo. It's not something that you should feel embarrassed about. So ask how you can deal with it, work out ways, and speak to people and try and get a bit of a plan together, so that you at least are prepared for some of the things that are going to be coming your way. And then when they do start to come your way, at least you'll have a bit of a understanding. Or if you don't, ask for help, because there are now places where you can get help or get people to be there for you.
I think for me as well is like it'd be kind of like, I don't know, tend to like normalize stuff. It's like, oh, we're just doing another show, or we're just doing, and like for me, I've kind of like keep telling myself like, no, I'm incredibly lucky to do what I'm doing, and what I'm doing now is incredibly great. I mean, I think there was a moment last year, we're doing Rock in Rio. It's anywhere between 60 to 80,000 people standing in front of the stage watching the show, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is just a normal show, like whatever. And I think it's important sometimes to not become numb to that stuff as well, and just and actually be happy, because no, you're pulling off something incredible here, and that we shouldn't, we always seem to have to this need to downplay incredible achievements as well. For me, I'm I really am trying to work and to make sure that, no, I do appreciate this incredible moment. And I remember looking, standing at the console, ready to hit go, and I just turned around and I looked, and the broadcast people had the monitor out with a jib shot over the crowd, and I was just like, yeah, this isn't normal. This isn't normal, and this is pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
And then hit go and had one of the greatest shows that I've ever done in my career. And I think it's important to not why should I normalise the greatest show I've ever done in my career, right? That should also, should also be spoken about. That
Well, I mean, I got involved probably like a lot of people do. You get into the music business because you think it's going to be sort of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. What's not to like about that? It's fantastic. And then of course you realise that maybe it isn't so great. And as a tour manager on very, very large, high-profile tours, I can pretty much be doing the same job that you would see the guy who runs a large corporation. I'm responsible for maybe £200 million worth of expenditure. I'm sat in an office pretty much all day long, answering phone calls, answering emails. The rock and roll side of it could be a long, long way away, and yet I'm traveling around the world on private planes and staying in 5-star hotels, but it can also become very mundane, funnily enough. But I always make a point of going out every gig that I'm doing and stand in the crowd for a couple of songs, so that I can think, well, this is why I'm here,